Have you ever been part of a team where you felt safe to speak up, share your ideas, even make mistakes without fear? Imagine the success that you would achieve if trust was at the heart of every single interaction. Today, we are going to explore the foundations of creating a culture of trust and some strategies for you to implement right away. Stick with us. Hey everyone, John here. 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 Welcome to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Welcome to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. I'm your host, John Espinosa. Thank you for joining us today. One of the important things to remember as we get into the episode for today is I want you to put yourself in a situation where you reflect on your experiences either with mistrust in an organization, building trust in a new team, or just a plain lack of trust that an organization will sometimes talk about, but they really don't understand what it takes to implement trust. So in this episode, we are going to talk about some practical strategies to help you as a leader out there build this foundation of trust. Because if we build the foundation on sandy or rocky soil, there are going to be cracks. And those cracks take a lot longer to fill when that foundation is poured and cured than they will if we just take care of the little things in the first place. So today, as I was journaling down, and I started with some questions. A lot of times when I'm coming up with the outlines of these episodes, I ask myself questions. And 3 questions that I asked as I was figuring out, okay, what do I want to talk about? When I talk about creating a culture of trust within an organization, because I truly believe that that is the foundation for team success. Teams will not be successful if there is not a certain level of trust within the organizations. Think about our military, our armed forces individuals. They go through a basic training camp. A lot of that, yes, is to get folks in shape. But a majority of those exercises are to bring people together. They're going through an experience, a challenge, and they're building trust. Because if they have to go out there and protect our freedoms, they need to trust that the person next to them has their back. When we look at businesses, when we look at small teams, small companies, large companies, entrepreneurs out there that may be contracting with other individuals, whether it be a human resources for payroll, or maybe it's a general contractor if you're a home builder, don't you have to have trust with those individuals? And that's where I tried to put myself. If I was in a situation where either I'm building a new team, I'm coming into an organization with an existing team and they don't know me, or I'm walking into a situation that had a lot of mistrust. Maybe the previous leader in there didn't do as well, didn't do what they said they were going to do. Maybe it's from the top level and there's this kind of underlying mistrust within the workforce for leadership, for managers. Whatever that looks like, you need to deal with it. And you need to have some practical strategies that we are going to talk about in this episode to help you along the way. So one of the questions that I asked myself is, why does trust really even matter? And I think through the examples that I just mentioned, trust matters because when times get tough, when everything is going well, when the organization is well-oiled machine and there aren't as many challenges on a day-to-day, it's easy to have trust in an individual or the illusion that you have trust. Because in the end, when times get tough, when something goes wrong, who are you going to blame? Is it going to be pointing the fingers at each other? Or is it going to be, we messed this one up. Together, we take that ownership and we're going to work to fix it because we can't let it happen again. You notice the we language there versus the you messed this up. You need to fix it. And I'm sure we've been on the other end of those types of conversations where you're already down on yourself. You know that you messed whatever up, a process, a system, a deliverable, contract work, whatever that looked like. you were already giving yourself some negative feedback there. And now the leader, business owner, you as the entrepreneur comes in and just keeps piling and piling it on. What's the lesson to be learned? The lesson to be learned for me is everybody makes mistakes. We're all human beings. There's a difference between a performance issue and someone genuinely making a mistake in the organization. So what's the difference for me? The difference is trust. Do you trust that individual to make it right? Do you trust that that individual made the mistake because it was just lack of oversight? Because if that trust is not there, then it's a performance problem. Then it's a performance issue. If you do not trust the people on your team to do the work that you've delegated, that is a performance issue. And that is not the conversation that I'm going to have today. Today, we're having the foundation conversation. Today, we are going to have a conversation around what it looks like to build trust. So that was the answer really for that first one. The second one is, how do you build trust? And that's where we're going to get into each one of the strategies here. And I'm going to give you some practical applications. I want you to be active listening to this. I want you to be an active learner in this. Get out your journals. I got my journal right here. I got my pen. I'm writing things down. Even as I was talking and prepping for this episode, after I journaled, I'm still thinking about examples. And I'm sure you all have been in some of the situations that we're going to go through today. So put yourself there, whether you've been there as a leader or you've been on the other side of the coin. So we'll get into how do you build trust. And then the second piece there is, once you've implemented whatever framework that you're going to use to start building trust, how do you continue to nurture that? And we're going to talk about consistency and the importance of consistency when we talk about nurturing trust. So those are the questions that I asked myself and we're going to answer as we walk through this. The first topic here that came really out of how do you build trust? And for me, this is fundamental when it comes to trust. It's leading with transparency. And you take the word transparency. Why is transparency vital for building trust? Transparency, think of, for me, it's being able to not necessarily look through an object. Transparency is for me to look at something and know that that individual is sharing all the information that they can share. They're telling me everything that they possibly can tell me at that moment. Transparency doesn't look like the nice person. It doesn't look like you having to spill the beans or share classified or confidential information. That's not transparency. So behaviors that are transparent look like me sitting in a meeting and sharing all the information about a challenge, and it may be around budget. Hey, we're not hitting our numbers. Tell me what's different. What's different from this quarter from the last quarter? Transparency looks like having a one-on-one conversation with somebody and just laying it all out there. This is what I'm seeing. What's going on? This is not normal for your standard behavior. Or as a new leader coming in, transparency could look like, I need to understand the value that you bring to this organization. In your own words. So again, as we talk about leading with transparency, it can look and feel like many different things. So what are some practical strategies? Some practical strategies that I personally use is I have weekly meetings. I'm a big weekly, bi-weekly meet with your team, your sub-teams, the leaders in the organization, your first team. As Peter Lencioni, it is your first team is your peers and your immediate supervisor, at least every 2 weeks. And it doesn't have to be for an hour. We get into this routine of scheduling meetings for an hour. Put it on the calendar for 30 minutes. Call it a 30-minute huddle. And in this huddle, you have an open session. You have a standing agenda. I always start out these meetings with who needs what from who. It allows right into the conversation to, you know what, John, I needed that report last week. I couldn't do my job because the report wasn't in my inbox or wasn't ready. Or John, that sale didn't go, we underbid. And the revenue or the cost sharing opportunity, we can't continue to have that. So a lot of the conversation there in those weekly or bi-weekly meetings take care of the transparency piece. People aren't pushing things under the rug. until they're a big enough problem, now where the leader has to get involved. And you're teaching them to create a culture of transparency within the organization. So you as a leader are modeling transparency, and then you're also coaching your team to be transparent. And I know you're thinking out there, you've been in that situation. You're like, John, it's not that easy. Creating transparency and building trust isn't easy. What I'm asking you to do is to take the time that you are going to need to build the culture of trust. And it starts with leading with transparency. It starts with modeling transparency. And I promise you, your team, they will notice. They will model that behavior as well. They will do as you do. You can tell them to be transparent till you're blue in the face. That doesn't work. You have to show up as the leader. You have to model that behavior, and they will follow. I can promise you that. So these weekly open book meetings. And another one that, as I was talking about here, is in this piece is clearly communicating successes and challenges. However you do that. I like to do it in my one-on-one meetings. I have a board. I'm a big whiteboard. Every week I go in there. What's the challenges for this week? You can use a journal to do this. You don't have to have a whiteboard. Get low tech. You can pull out a piece of paper out of the copier machine. However you want to notate what are the big rocks this week that we have to address. That is how you're going to be able to clearly articulate your challenges. When it comes to successes, give yourself 24 hours to celebrate a success. It may be reaching a milestone in a project. It may be the end of a project and you've made the big sale. You've closed that big deal. You got certified for whatever part that you've been producing or engineering, whatever that looks like for your organization. You landed that big client that you've been working on. Give yourself 24 hours to celebrate and then ask yourself what's next. We get into this trap of once we reach the pinnacle, the journey is always going to be better than the actual award. I can promise you that. People, you hear gold medalists, Olympic gold medalists talk about when they actually achieve that gold medal, it quite wasn't what they expected. Why? Because it was about the journey. It was about the sacrifice that they were making. It was about the competition. And then they got the award and it just wasn't quite what they had built up in their mind. And that's what happens a lot. When we reach the end and we achieve success, whatever story that we've built up probably isn't going to be the story that we actually experience. So what do? We don't take time to celebrate. Pause and give yourself at least 24 hours. And then move on to what's next. That's going to help a lot with, again, recognizing those successes. And then when that next challenge comes about, they know that when they reach that, whatever the end looks like with that challenge, you are going to recognize them. You're going to reward them because, again, this is all about changing behavior. Building trust is about modeling the behavior, recognizing when there's a discrepancy in what is supposed to be happening, the expectation, and what the true behavior is going on. So closing that gap and having a hard discussion, that's what transparency is about. So leading with transparency, the very first thing there when we talk about creating this culture of trust. The second item that I thought about as I was brainstorming and answering this question about how to build trust is vulnerability. This word vulnerability keeps on coming up for me. And I've asked other leaders about it. And I've asked just random people, hey, what does vulnerability look like for you? Vulnerability, the words touchy-feely get associated with vulnerability. And I don't like that. I don't like the fact that people see vulnerability as you being touchy-feely. And then I always question, well, what's wrong with being touchy-feely? I've never heard somebody comment or say something bad. Oh, John's too touchy-feely. Now I'm talking not feeling in the physical sense, but feeling connected to their emotions. So I just wanted to put that out there. But the term vulnerability doesn't have anything to do with touchy-feely. The term vulnerability in the root really is, being vulnerable as a leader strengthens the connections. Relationship Management 101. I used to think as a leader that I had to be good at managing a budget, which you do, but that was the number one skill. Then I got a budget and I managed it. We're always short on money. We never have enough that we actually plan to spend for. So that's not really the thing. Then I thought it was You got to be a technical expert. You got to know what your team knows technically. And I was a part of many teams where I was a technical expert. I was a peer, team lead, or supervisor to a group of people who shared the same technical background as I did. I changed that. I challenged myself to go outside. I challenged myself to lead a team that I had no clue what their technical expertise was. So that wasn't it. Then I thought long and hard. I'm like, all right, John, what is it? What is it, right? What do you need to know? And it came down to relationship management. And one of the key areas in relationship management is vulnerability. So when we talk about what vulnerability looks like, for me, vulnerability looks like sharing information when you have that information that's pertinent to that situation. Vulnerability looks like me admitting when I made a mistake. I dropped the ball on this one. I was wrong. We're going to fix it, right? I will make it right. And I'll even go a step further. If someone on the team drops the ball and you have trust in that individual that they were just overworked, they were overloaded, their plate was full and something fell through the cracks, as the leader, I'm going to take responsibility for that. We dropped the ball, we will remedy it, and we'll make sure that we fill that crack, that we fill that gap in the process. Whatever that looks like, build back up. I will tell you, there is nothing more important or nothing more trust building wise that a leader can do than take responsibility. Put it on your back. Put it on yourself. Your trust factor exponentially will increase. Think about if you made the mistake. Back to my story as I was talking, you have a GC, you're the GC, then you have a subcontractor that makes a mistake, and now the homeowner, not too happy, right? Or you're the team lead and you have a member, a peer that makes a mistake on a deliverable, and the customer probably not going to be too happy. But you trust this individual. You know that's not what their previous experiences with them. You know that's just something that is a mistake. And you get piled on. The leader points the finger. The leader calls you out. You're already down on yourself. You're already giving yourself a hard enough time. And now the leader is pouring it on. What does that feel like? How does that feel? Probably not the best situation you want to be in. Vice versa, what if that leader takes responsibility for that mistake with the customer, with the home buyer? And now what happens? You're going to make dang sure that next time, whatever that tool is, whatever that process, whatever that deliverable looks like, whatever that flooring is, you're going to make sure and double check that it's correct. So you see how this trust factor works, and this being vulnerable increases and builds that foundation of trust. People will go farther and they will work harder for leaders that they can trust, leaders that value their expertise, and you know them well enough to say, hey, listen, we made a mistake on this one. Let's go figure it out, and we're going to do better next time. So that's one of the ways. Another way, share your challenges. I find this, and I coach this whenever I talk to people leading up. If you do not know as a team member or a leader what your supervisor, your leader, their challenges are, probably time to ask. How do you know that you're adding value if you don't know what their unique challenges are? And as a leader, you need to be able to share those challenges. What are the things that keep you up at night? I love that question. Or another one is, if you were to sell this business tomorrow, what would the buyer change day one? Those two questions are excellent ways to begin to identify the unique challenges. Or ask your boss, what keeps you up at night? And just pause and let them tell you, because their challenges are going to come out. They are going to let you know the unique things that they worry about, that are on their mind. And if you can help alleviate one of those things, automatic trust build right there. And if you share your challenges, you don't keep things a secret, and your team goes out and surprises you and performs, addresses that challenges, comes up with a great solution, automatic trust build right there. So the important part in the practical application here, especially as we're building vulnerability, is to share our challenges and then invite others to do the same. So that was the second part. Lead up. You can lead out and lead up. We don't always have to lead down. And I even hate the term lead down because I don't lead down to anybody. I'm working for them. I'm working for my team. I'm working for my business. They're not working for me. I'm the hardest worker. I'm the one who's modeling that. And I'm going to be vulnerable enough to make sure that they trust me. And if I lead with vulnerability and I model that, they in turn will reciprocate. I can promise you. And if they don't, then maybe that's not the place for them. And that's a conversation. But again, remember that you're going to have for those low performers where you have a performance problem. But we are assuming that you have high performers on your team because that is what we're striving for. A team of high performers, a team of go-tos. So encourage vulnerability. I want to take a quick break from our discussion today to mention a couple things. First of all, thank you for listening. Only 50% of our listeners are subscribed to our channel. Do me a favor, click on that subscribe button. It's going to allow our channel to continue to grow and give you updates whenever we get new episodes published. The second thing is our coaching program. People who want to work with me are looking to make a lasting change, level up, or get unstuck. I gave up on my dreams. I was a young parent, had to make a couple career changes. I went through some financial hardships. I had to learn how to flip my mindset and stay consistent. Our coaching programs are individualized one-on-one sessions where I will teach you a proven system and guarantee that you can reinvent yourself over and over again. If that sounds like something that interests you, head on over to thejohnespinosa.com and sign up to get more information. Now back to the show. This last one that I really want to talk about and spend just a little bit of time on before we come to an end today is demonstrating consistency and accountability. And this really ties into transparency and vulnerability, but I see it just a little bit differently. And I was questioning myself, do I leave this a separate strategy or do I weave it into something else? But here's what I wrote down, and I'm going to read it because I think this is why it's important to leave separately is our trust deepens when the teams see consistency and accountability from not only the leaders, but the peers. In that part of when the team sees and feels consistency and accountability, the trust level goes up. So what are some applicable strategies here? I like to implement a system. I love systems when it comes to teams because when you look even at a team itself, it's a system. There are parts, some are interchangeable, some are bigger parts and lifting heavier loads. They're the bigger spokes on the wheel. Some are the smaller gears. That is an important concept whenever you talk about consistency and accountability because you need to have a system to hold people accountable. So, for example, one of the most prolific or probably a system that you currently have is performance reviews. That is a system that has stand the test of time. We used it in a managerial type environment where you had mid-year, probably started out with an initial, you had a mid-year, and then you had a final performance review. So you talk to your employees or your team or whoever you were leading every 4 to 6 months. Are you kidding me? As a leader, that's why I go back to the weekly and the bi-weekly meetings. I'm going to let folks know that I see something that shouldn't be going on when it's happening or is close to it happening. I'm not going to wait I'm just going to write this down and I'll talk about it. It's almost like if you find a leak in your seat and you know the leak's there. It's almost like you finding a leak underneath your sink. It's the kitchen sink. It's a sink that you're using all the time and you put a bucket under the sink to catch the water. In that bucket, every once in a while, you pull it out and you dump it. But guess what? That leak is going to get bigger and that bucket is going to fill up faster. That is exactly what I'm talking about when you only wait 4 to 6 months to have an accountability conversation. That system, I know it is part of many organizations and many teams, but to me, you got to have a better system than that. You got to have a system of accountability that is built on trust, where you can have crucial conversations with employees, and teams can have those crucial conversations when something isn't going right. Very important to implement a system. So again, I like biweekly and weekly meetings. You can do sub-team meetings. I think even a month now. Things change so rapidly. I'm a big fan of 90-day sprints. In those 90-day sprints, I'm going to have at least a minimum of 8 meetings if you do biweekly. So again, make sure you're meeting regularly and you have that system. Another thing that I think is very important when we talk about consistency and accountability is some type of action item chart, some type of way to follow up on commitments. We've all been in that meeting that there's a lot of things being thrown out, a lot of ideas, and somebody says, I got that, and somebody else says, no, I'll do that. And then 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later in the meeting, another action comes up. I got that. Well, guess what? Who's capturing all those actions? So after that meeting ends and you're probably going to another meeting, guess what? Now, right out the door. I don't know about you. That's why I journal. That's why I write things down. So you have to have a system to say, okay, I got an action here. John, I got you down for this one. Make sure that you are assigning the actions. And then, hey, John, you think you can get that to me by next week? Before the end of the meeting. Very, very important when we talk about consistency and accountability. And then later on our weekly one-on-ones, I hate to keep harping on these weekly and bi-weekly meetings, but that's the time to follow up and say, I have in my notes here, I captured on whatever system or platform that you're tracking this, right? And it's not micromanagement, because I know many of you probably went to, John, you're a micromanager. People feel micromanaged. I can promise you that's not the case. I can promise you that people want to be held accountable. High performers want to be held accountable. It goes back to making sure that we celebrate successes and we reward for the behavior. If somebody takes an action and they finish before the deadline, I'm going to say thank you. I, depending on how they like to be recognized, will recognize that in the team. Hey, because John got his deliverable in a week in advance, or John finished his project, whatever that looks like, he saved X number of dollars, or she saved X number of dollars, or it's allowed us to move into the next phase before it was scheduled. I'm going to talk about that. That's a very important piece here. So when we talk about scheduling action items, assigning, and then finding out some due dates, very important part of keeping people accountable and keeping people consistent. Now, don't do it in one meeting and then not do it in another, because that is inconsistent. Here we want to stay consistent and let them know. As the leader, let them know what you're doing and the why behind it. Again, that communication piece, making sure that we're leading with transparency. This isn't micromanaging. And I would say it just like that. Throw it out there. This is making sure that we are all accountable and we're remaining consistent. And if it were me, I'd have the most items out there. My name would be tagged to certain things so that they know it's not just them. John's holding himself accountable, and I need you to hold me accountable along the way. Big tip there. I love that. And then recognizing consistently reliable behavior. So, this piece again goes back to making sure that we pause and we recognize the behavior that we want to see. Because if you continue to perform as a high performer on the team and you don't at least get a thank you or a pat on the back or a kudos, how do you know what you're doing? You're going to start building that story in the back. Well, I'm doing a great job here. I'm here before everybody. I stay late. I don't think John recognizes it. That's when people start to question, is this the right organization for me? So as a leader, make sure that you know your team, you appreciate them. Very easy to do. Okay, so again, I think when we talk about building this culture of trust, it's very important to recognize the fact that we as leaders, one of the main responsibilities for us to do, whether we're stepping in to an existing team, forming a new team, or just rebuilding a team, we have to lay the foundation of trust. We have to make sure that that foundation is solid enough to when we start building upon it and that mistake happens, the resource constraint comes about, the lack of funds, we're able to adapt, we're able to pivot, and we're able to conquer the most difficult challenges that our teams will face. And it starts with the leader. I hope these strategies helped you today. Again, challenge for you. Implement one. Start one tomorrow. Figure out what day one is, and then don't miss 2 days in a row. I believe in you. Go be great. Talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you like what you're hearing, do us a favor. Click on that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up or leave a comment. That lets us know that what we are putting out benefits you. If you want additional information or resources or learn how to work with me, head on over to thejohnespinosa.com, because when we become better versions of ourselves, it helps us get others to where they're going. Go be great. Talk to everyone later.